Bullied tries to act like it was in school. Guess I will tell on you then. In secondary school I was tormented by a specific bully. For years I was beaten up and publicly humiliated on a daily basis. The worst thing he did was beat me up so bad that I got a concussion and broken ribs when I was 14. He never faced consequences in school because his family was rich and he was pretty popular. For context, I live in a pretty small town in England, so everyone knows everyone, including the bully. He left the school when I was 17 and I didn't see him for about a year. Around this time I got way more popular and started going to parties and making more friends, and annoyingly he was friends with some of my friends and his girlfriend was at my school, but I managed to avoid him mostly until I finished school. Unfortunately I saw him a few months later. Me and my friends went to the pub to celebrate our exam results, and he was a complete asshole to me, started insulting me and mocking me to my friends, saying why do you hang out with me, bringing up a bunch of stuff from years ago, and at one point put me in a headlock and told me that my friends only hung out with me out of pity. I wasn't going to take it, but I also wasn't going to get into a punch-up because I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of getting me angry, and right at that moment I overheard the perfect thing. He was bragging to his friends about the house party he was having and saying about all the drugs he was going to take to the party, and said he had it all in his car. It wasn't just a bit of weed either. If I remember correctly, he said he had 13 bags of coke, about 30 pills of MDMA and 7 or 8 grams of ketamine, and then I knew what I would do for my revenge on the guy. As he was leaving I followed him to his car and took a photo of his number plate, then after he was driving off I walked off and called the police. I knew they needed something more than hearsay to stop the car, especially because I didn't want to be traced back to it, so I told the police I saw my bully snorting a white powder in the pub toilets. This was a complete fabrication, and then get into the driver's side of the car. I then provided them with the license plate of the car and told them the direction they were heading in. I honestly didn't think they were going to stop him, or maybe they would ask him questions later and ruin his party, but the driving on drugs allegation plus the fact he had been arrested for minor possession before, which I didn't know at the time, was enough for the police to take it seriously, and stop and search his car, which they found all the drugs he was transporting to his party, and he got arrested for it. The consequences of his arrest meant he lost out on his university place. His rich parents had enough of his behavior, so kicked him out and cut him off from their funds. And a rumor I heard was that in turn for a lower sentence my bully ratted out his supplier, which resulted in him getting stabbed multiple times, and as a consequence of that now has to wear a colostomy bag, and that plus his criminal record means he is currently unemployed. Pervy ex-stepfather gets his just desserts, a nuclear revenge tale that took 15 years to pay off. Hey people. This nuclear revenge tale took 15 years to finally resolve, and I couldn't be happier. First, some background is needed to get the setup. My ex-stepfather, I refuse to acknowledge that he married my mother, and since my mother is deceased, I shouldn't have to anymore, is an awful man. My mother married him because she thought I needed a man in my life to help raise me. He was abusive verbally, and was just a toxic person to be around. Even when my mother and he divorced, he still insisted on trying to see me, and I had to be forced to go see him and his new wife every other weekend. When I moved away from the city he was in, due to me ending up in foster care, I didn't bother looking him up, nor trying to find out if he was even still alive. So, when I moved back in 2008, I was kinda surprised to find out he was still alive. Sorry for this lead up, but this is where the foundation of this revenge takes place. When I moved back to the city, I had worked my arse off and bought me my first car, a 1992 Buick Regal Custom. I loved that car, and I also loved helping people out, which was easier with a car. Well, my ex-stepdad knew about the car, because he had seen me driving around town, running errands for the local homeless shelter where I volunteered, taking guys to the doctor's office when they didn't want to wait on a bus, stuff like that, and he was a resident at said shelter. Through my volunteer work at the shelter, I had befriended a couple of young guys who had landed on hard times, and were just working odd jobs to save up some money to move back to their hometown, the same town I had moved back to the city from. After hearing about this, and their plans to just get a Greyhound down there, I told them no, that I would actually drive them there for like $40 in gas, saving them about $250. We made arrangements, and set a date for their departure. Apparently, my ex-stepdad heard about this, so he cornered them in the shower that night, told them that he was gonna have his way with them, and that I would be expecting the same kind of payment when I got them to that town. When they refused, he threatened to kill them, so they finally accepted. When I pulled up to pick them up the next morning, I can tell the air was off, like something had happened. Yesterday, these two guys were eager to leave this city behind, and now, they treated my car as if it had live vipers in the passenger seat. So, I asked them what was up. They told me they didn't know about leaving the city with me, and I assured them it would be fine, not knowing what my ex-stepdad had done the night prior. After a little coaxing and me mentioning that the Greyhound doesn't even run to where they were trying to go, they loaded up my trunk, and off we went. I could feel the tension in the car, and it had become so thick, that you could slice through it using a hydrojet. After we crossed into the neighboring state, they asked me if I could just drop them off at a hotel, and they would try to find other accommodations down to where they were going. I said I wouldn't mind, but wanted to know what brought on the sudden change of plans. After a tearful choking up in the back seat, they told me what had transpired the night before with my ex-stepdad, and I saw red. Ooh, I absolutely despise this man. I wanted to, no, I needed to hurt him, but how? After assuring the two boys that they were going to be fine, and that I wasn't even about to put them through what he did, they finally allowed me to take them all the way to their town. I instructed them to file assault charges against him, and to make sure they submit DNA samples to the police, and they assured me they would. On the way back, I plotted my revenge against him, and that's when it dawned on me, my ex-stepdad was a registered offender for some stupid night when he was 16. He had told me before that he was caught urinating on an elementary school's swing set as a youth, and had to register. That was the main reason I ended up in foster care to begin with, something about child endangerment, bureaucratic BS. I also know that he didn't register in our state for the last couple of years, because, had he did, he would have been kicked out of the shelter he was staying in, since they do a 3 times a day, 7-day-a-week, community outreach meal for not only the residents, but those who needed a hot meal that day, which would also include children. So, on the way back, I had informed the Office of Admissions staff that they had an offender in their shelter, and if they didn't get him out, I would report the shelter to the police. They had one of those safe spot stickers designating the shelter as a safe space for kids. Did I forget to mention that this shelter also ran a youth summer camp, and had a youth correctional facility and the library right next to it? They took action almost immediately, but when they went to evict him, he was nowhere to be seen. He had taken off, not to be seen again. Or so I thought. You see, when he vanished from the shelter that day, he thought the safest place to hide out was in his hometown, 9 states away. A smarter person would have looked up what his registration entailed, and would have known that fleeing across state lines without informing law enforcement is a felony, and it doesn't just stop at the state one left, but carries over to every state between point of origin and destination. So, he had racked up 9+ felony charges against him, just for that little jaunt. Fast forward to about 3 months ago, I get a message from the two boys on Facebook, asking me for my new number. I give it to them, and am almost immediately put in touch with the county sheriff, who had a federal agent in his office, asking if I knew where my ex-stepdad was. As I was telling both gentlemen that I didn't have a clue, my Facebook pinged. It was my ex-stepdad's wife, telling me to give her husband a chance to reconcile. A quick look on her page revealed that they were together, living in my hometown, and what's more, seriously, future Darwin Award winners here, they were living next door to the school he was caught urinating on all those years ago. I relayed that information to both gentlemen, and asked them what charges they had on him. They said they had 2 counts of statutory on him, and 3 counts of felony evasion. I mentioned his failure to register, and the day he left my hometown, he had ran to his hometown, 9 states away. The county sheriff informed me that he was calling from that county, and he wasn't aware of the failure to register charges, but thanked me for informing him. Ladies and gentlemen, that dirtbag that nearly ruined my life, my trust with other people, and my reputation in my hometown was finally getting what is owed to him, 25 to life for everything, and isn't eligible for parole for another 17 years, if he lives that long. He is better off rotting in the depths of Tartarus, for the lives he ruined. This will be a long one, so grab some popcorn. Throw away to protect identity, all the names are made up and blah blah blah. Let me start with a little background. Me 28M and my wife 26F married 3 years ago and been together for 6 years. When we met I was already in my 3rd year of college for a special branch of a very productive industry, something like the USA Army. You go into a different country for a few months, do some really dangerous jobs, get paid a lot, come back a few months and so on. In the beginning I was going for 6, 8 or even 10 months away in order to promote as fast as possible. Now I get paid around 4 years of medium salary in my country in just 3 months. Is a hard job but I love it. My wife was very supportive and I always knew that it was very hard for her to have this kind of lifestyle. I always tried to spoil her and compensate for my time spent away from her with tons of gifts from trips to exotic places. 2 years ago when I came home after an extended contract, I had to stay almost 2 more months because all flights and borders got shut down during COVID, but got 20% extra salary during this time. She told me she can't take it anymore and that she goes crazy when she's alone at home and she has nothing to do. She lost her job during COVID and did not want to work again after that, which I fully support because I wanted her to be happy and money was not a problem. I was petrified and at first because I believed she wanted to break up. Then she continued with, "I love you so much and I want you to give me a baby so I can take care of him and have a little bit of you when you are gone on contracts." After 5 months of hard work with no women in a 100 kilometers range, making a baby was done very fast. And multiple times, just to be sure, if you know what I'm talking about. I was nervous for the first month because we always feared we may not be able to make a baby. For the first 4 years we did not use any kind of protection except pull out and she never got pregnant. But after a few weeks she wakes me up with a long kiss and a smile on her face, then shows me the test result. I was the happiest man alive. Everything changed. I was a man now, I was a father, I was on top of the world. I was going with her on every doctor appointment and during contract I was asking for echo sounds instead of nudes. The birth had no complications and everything went amazing. 1 month later I go on another contract to make some money that should cover every need for our little baby. Halfway during this contract I receive a text from my wife which shattered my life. The text was short and simple and I will never forget the 4 words that sent me into deepest depression I have ever had. I want a divorce. I did not understand. I tried to call her to find out what happened and nothing. After a few days of talking back and forth she said, "I want a divorce so I can marry with the love of my life." I was already preparing my suitcase because I made a request to my company to send me back as an emergency. When I got home her and the baby were gone. 2 weeks later I was in court to settle the divorce. During this I found out that she had a lover for well over 4 years and she plans to marry him as soon as the divorce is done. Now the laws in my country are different and I knew that my first priority should be a really good lawyer. My wife had a really shitty one and she decided to speak by herself without the help of the lawyer most of the time. Her whole idea was, I am a woman and he is never home. Well, even if the law usually favors women in my country, cheating is considered to be a breach of contract, wedding contract. And she wanted to take full custody of our children in order for me to pay child support. I was not letting this happen. I speak with my lawyer and an accountant and it seems that I only had to pay child support from my base salary and my danger bonus is not included in child support because it is for my life risk and mine alone. And because the company pays less taxes on the danger bonuses, I have a lot of them and my base salary is around 10% of my income. When she found out that she would take almost nothing from child support and I gave her the option of me taking full custody of the child, with a no contact rule, and I will never ask her for child support, she agreed in a second. Basically she agreed to get out of our lives. We even changed the birth certificate of the child as me the father and a blank space for the mother. She gave up any kind of claim on the baby. During the trial her lover was asked to come as a witness. And the idiot agreed. He is an AliExpress version of Andrew Tate. An alpha man who treats women like shit and this seems to turns her on, and has a pretty good income because he has a small company. Less than half my salary but he is always home and it is still a lot of money for our country. Now during the trial he said they cheated behind my back for 3 years and that the baby is his and she tricked me to make her a baby in order for me not to find out about her cheating. He said all this just to make me feel horrible, I guess, because this is actually kinda illegal, something like alienating the love and other law terms my lawyer explained to me. He basically said I knew they are married but I decided to ruin the marriage. Now at this point the child situation was already done and an agreement was signed. The judge asked my wife if it was true and she said yes and ordered a DNA test just to confirm. After the DNA test that confirmed what they said, the judge said she will let me cancel the agreement and settle the situation again with my wife now that the child is not biologically mine. I said no, Your Honor. This child is mine and I want to keep him. The judge was stunned for a minute but then she said, well, if the agreement is a valid contract and since you don't want to void it, then Mr. L, you are a father and no one can take the child away from you. In my country it doesn't matter who is the biological parent, it matters who is the parent in the documents. And since he knew he is the father since the beginning and did not come to the hospital to declare it, he automatically cancelled all his paternal claims. Sounds stupid but it makes sense in order to protect the idea of a family, and if a man recognizes a fatherless child at the hospital he should not fear that the biological father will come back. It is order to protect the value of family and encourage people to do a good thing and start a family and things like that. Now the divorce was over. I got my baby and my wife was out of my life. The first thing I did was hire 3 babysitters to work 8 hours a day so my child has someone to stay with him 24/7 and I have time to prepare my revenge. I started 2 separate companies with the help of an online assistant from India. You can hire them kind of cheap and they do whatever you need if it's online. This guy made 2 super professional companies. One in industrial credits, give money to businesses for a lower rate than banks, and the second one was a copycat of my ex-company, but this one was in the same city as his. Both were made just for one client, my ex-wife's lover. My assistant started sending tons of ads of my credit company to him. Emails, targeted Google and Facebook ads, etc. I was sure that he knew that if he needed money, this is the place he can get a lot with low rates. Next I made a lot of advertisements on the second company. But the company had only machines, the rented space and only one worker, the cleaning lady. Every time someone calls for the company for services, they got immediately declined because we are overbooked. My ex-wife's lover, let's call him D, was one of them. He gets mad every time he got rejected because he sees how big the competition is. Now it was the time to give him the bait. Because my company had some problems in the main country. I don't even know which country this company was registered in because they changed the management and wanted to make some fast profit, so the regional manager wanted to sell some of the equipment. When he heard this, he started calling and sending emails to buy them out. The response was something like, "We are an international company, we can't sell the brand but we can sell some equipment." It was illegal for me to sell the company without showing him the accountant's data, which was empty, but equipment was something I could sell just with a simple contract. He wanted the competition out of his city but he did not need the equipment. So the manager gave him a deal. If you buy our equipment for, let's say, 3 times the price, we can say in the contract that we will not make business again in this city. In just 2 hours I received calls and emails on my first company for a credit for that equipment. I knew he was out of money because he spent a lot on his future wedding with my ex-wife. I've sent him a contract. Based on our valuation, the equipment is not worth that money, so he will need to give us a guarantee, his company, and he is not allowed to sell any equipment or parts of his company until he pays everything back, and if he is behind in payment for 6 months straight, I get all of it. Also in the contract I stated that the credit company will buy that equipment directly. Basically I just give myself my money. And I made sure every single word of the contract is legal and is a deal good enough for him to take it. Later that same day he sent me the signed contract. Now normally he should be able to pay for everything, even if the clients he hoped he will get from this company leaving are not existent. He still should be able to pay if he gives me around 80% of his company income for the next 5 years. Fast forward a bit. On the day of their wedding I go to give them an envelope. In my country you give money in envelopes as a wedding gift. He start to laugh at me and tell me to get out cause I am not invited and he doesn't need my money. I smiled and told him to open it. He looked inside and it said he was expected to come to court next week. He laughed and asked, "What is this?" and I told him, "See you in court, enjoy your wedding night." Next week when he came to court, I was suing him for child support. As I said, in my country if you are aware that you have a child and refuse to go to the hospital to recognize him, you are no longer the father but you are still forced to pay child support, and is actually an increased rate because you tried to dodge responsibility, like running from a car accident scene. He did not want to pay, so he tried to say that he wants the child or co-custody, that he is the biological and blood. This made me happy because I wanted to drag the trial as much as possible to drain him of all his money. But I couldn't. After the judge saw all his declarations during the divorce trial, she ended the trial really fast and forced him to pay me 40% of his and his company income, since the child was born, until he will finish college or I get married. And guess who did not manage to pay? And guess who is the new owner of his company? Now I don't work anymore, I just run his company and spend almost all my time with my child. Update. A lot of people asked me about the child and the fact that I am not a biological father. I answered to some comments, but I want to put this answer here so people will stop asking. I do not plan to hide my child that I am not the biological father. As I said in a previous comment, we will talk about this when the time will come in high school or around that age. Until then I will try to be the best friend and paternal figure I can be, and if my child decides to go to the biological father, then I will not have any objection. Deceive into bonding? I need this child more than you think. After all that happened, I don't want a relationship anymore and I am very lonely, and being financially free, I have no purpose in life anymore. And about the statistics. Yes, statistics do not lie. And I did punish paternity fraud. But I punished the idiot who did it. Not the innocent child. I harass him every month if he is one day late on child support, and I have a lawyer on payday just to mess with him and scare him with another court call. I do not give a fuck about every man and blah blah. I take care of myself and my child, and other people are not my business. If you are so insecure that you think I must punish my child so women will be scared to cheat on you, then maybe you are the problem.